Directed and co-written by Baz Hancher, we are talking 45. And this is a short movie, a micro-budget short movie. Budget was around £2,500 as far as I can tell. And although I say it's a short movie, it is not a super short movie. It's a long short movie, if you'd like. It's about 40 minutes. So not feature length, but also not like a short that you would see necessarily on an anthology. So a reasonably length short film. And I was asked to review this one. So this story primarily focuses on a father whose daughter had been murdered in some type of ritualistic killing, potentially linked to some type of Satanism. And it follows this father going down the rabbit hole, so to speak, of investigating on his own about what has happened to his daughter, the reasons for it, and potentially discovering as a killer people call 45. And he may well be the Antichrist. And where this path will lead him, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss 45. Now, I have seen this or being described as The Omen meets Seven. And when you look at the story, you can kind of see why people would say that. It's also been likened to The Exorcist, but I failed to see that comparison. So let's talk about what I think works in this movie's favour. Now, this is a serious movie. It's taken, it's obviously a serious subject, and it's not like a kind of a jokey, campy movie in any way. It's deadly sort of serious. And I've got to say, I think the actual story here is pretty interesting. And it does kind of feel like, as I say, Omen meets Seven in a way, where we have this kind of father kind of trying to figure out clues, talking to people, and finding out that this kind of larger world of theology and religion is kind of descending upon him, and potentially is going to have dark consequences. And it's an interesting idea, and there's a lot of kind of theological conversations and ideology and ideas thrown around here about what it all means. The end of days, the Antichrist, all the rest of it. So, it has some quite interesting themes in the movie, and it's taken seriously. So that I quite appreciated. So, if you like a religious kind of style horror movie, you may want to check it out. I mean, again, when we look at the budget of this movie, which is very low budget, it's really a micro budget movie. It has quite a large cast. It also has some reasonable VFX in it. Prosthetic effects for like people who have been influenced by, demonic proclivities and things like this, or we kind of see like a more overt demonic imagery towards the end. I've got to say, it was fairly impressive, again, when you consider such a low budget movie. And there is a reasonable amount of characters here. And I think the general feel of the movie is that this father is kind of getting in over his head the longer it kind of goes on. And obviously you can kind of see it's not going to end very well for him, really. So, you kind of... The movie, I think, does a reasonable job here of almost making you want to kind of say to this father, like, I appreciate you want to obviously find out what happened to your daughter, but it's only going to lead to dark places. And I think that the movie, you can kind of understand the father's motivation, but at the same time you can kind of see where it's going to lead, and you would think, it kind of makes you want to shake this guy into sort of being a bit more careful and things like that. So, I think there's a lot going on in the movie in regards to ideas and things like this. So that's what I would say works in this movie's favour. What it doesn't work, now again, we have to consider this is a micro-budget film. But outside of that, if we can kind of say, okay, there are some low-budget things here that are low budget, right? And maybe we'll touch on it again. The main issue I have that I think is not necessarily a budgetary issue is this movie is so exposition heavy. It is, unfortunately, the vast majority of this 40 minutes is our father talking to one person in a room, another person in a room, another person in the room, another person in the room, and that's basically the movie. Delivering lots of kind of exposition heavy sort of dialogue sequences, and only occasionally a little kind of visual something kind of going on in the background. Even the kind of the ending scene where we have the more overt kind of demonic iconography, it's still a massive exposition scene. So this, I think, needed to have a little bit more going on in regards to, I mean, maybe this is like a proof of concept. You know, the idea of the story. Had this been a feature length, you could have had more scenes which were not just kind of like dialogue dumps. You know, had a little bit more kind of visual showing rather than kind of telling necessarily. But yeah, it does feel like it's a little bit too heavy on the old exposition. As I say, it is a series of conversations in rooms, and that's a critique I often, you know, give the kind of like silent movies or very low budget movies that can't do a lot in regards to, you know, location shooting or sets or VFX or things like this. So they rely on a lot on kind of lots of conversations in rooms, which leads me to the next thing is the acting is mixed. Let me just kind of say that we do have a reasonably large cast for a short film with such a low budget, and again, because it is such a low budget film, maybe some of these actors are, you know, less experienced, so the acting is a mixed bag, shall we say. The problem is when you are having a movie which is so reliant on dialogue and the delivery of that dialogue, rather than kind of more visual kind of cues, I think the acting sticks out more. Do you see what I mean? So if you're relying very much on drama, but you have actors that can't deliver it in a dramatic style, again, it kind of like, it sort of comes away a little bit there. So there is the problem with that, really, and that kind of goes hand in hand with having maybe a little bit too much kind of like just dialogue heavy scenes, you know, really with that much kind of going on. I always think when you have a movie that is quite nihilistic, well, you have a situation, even, and I've said this about fiction films, where I feel like you need to have a protagonist that has a chance of winning, in a way, because otherwise it doesn't really have, you can never really feel like you can root for the guy, because you're just going on a downward trajectory. And I always think where we have a movie where it's just the protagonist is just shit on and shit on and shit on, and he never really feels like he's going to win, you never have that kind of hope for the character, if that makes sense. So again, this movie just seems to be like a sort of a downward spiral for our protagonist, and I think it could have, you know, in my opinion at the very least, you have to have a way that where you can feel the protagonist, even if he doesn't, but he might be able to win if they were to do you know, something or some type of thing, but you know, to give him a chance. I think if you have a film where it's just like watching a character crash and burn over a prolonged period of time without any hope of winning, you know, it's you can't really ever kind of get like that invested necessarily. So again, I think this maybe is a good proof of concept. The idea here is relatively solid. If you like Seven and The Omen, I think the kind of the theology-based kind of synopsis for the story is a solid one. You know, if they make it to a feature length, maybe there could be a little bit more to it. But it's to say, you know, I'm short films I generally don't rank, and I don't rate them, so I won't on this one. But you've heard my thoughts, obviously. If you want to check it out, the filmmakers may leave me a link or something, and I'll pop it in the description. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on 45. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.
All your dark desires.
Join Geek Legion of Doom.